Hey everyone, welcome into Attacking Third Monday, 11 a.m., a little tardy. Sandra Herrera, Christine Cupo, Lisa Carlin, but Christine, the chat on YouTube, they're ready. They're ready. They're
They've
always
been
ready for
ready.
you.
Girl, they were waiting. They were like, what's TikTok? You know you only got 30 minutes. No, they're ready to
30.
go. Apologies to them, but we were having our little
Yeah.
side chats already, so we're good. I think we're on the level still.
Well, thanks for hanging with us. If you're with us live on YouTube, Tracy, we see you in the chat. Paul's hanging with us. Melanie, Chloe, James. Good morning, guys. If you haven't joined the chat yet, subscribe, like this video, join the convo because it's a whole dang thing and we have a good time in there, don't we, Sandra?
Always.
Always. Always. Megan, hey yo, what is
She
up?
checking
Megan, you
in.
are just in time. The show starting right now. What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Welcome into Attacking Third alongside Sandra Herrera and Christine Cupo. I'm Lisa Carlin. We have packed show today because Sandra is back. We missed her. She was out in LA last week, but now we get her back. We're going to pick her brain on everything that happened. We chatted with new Canada Women's National Team head coach Casey Stoney. We've got Barclays Women's Super League recap in case you missed it, news and notes, all the things, Sandra, but we missed you. We missed you last week. How was your weekend?
Pretty eventful. I missed you guys too, though. We wanted to try to figure out a way to do a little bit of media day integration with A3, but turns out it's a pretty big time change from East Coast to West Coast. So we just weren't able to nail that down. But we've got some good stuff that we're going to get through today. Some snippets that we're going to chat
Sandra
about.
Bomb. There's a time
maybe-
change from East Coast to West Coast.
Yeah, letting the people know that there's a huge time gap. But you know what? It was the first time the NWSL ever did something like a media day. So it was nice to see another kind of very tangible thing you could just like look at and point at and say, here are ways in which the league is trying to continue to grow. So yeah, for first time for everything. And it was really nice to be on out there. Shout out to Party Catry. She was also out there with me.
Oh, nice.
You know, Andrea Neville. We had a great production crew out there. Everyone trying to get a lot of good stuff for CBS and NWSL coming up this season.
Christine, how was your weekend? What'd you get into?
It was good. I was boring. I'm so sorry to report. Went down the shore, Gigi and I. We had some errands to run. I tended to my poor snake plants that haven't really gotten any
bless
love
them.
since I moved in December. So trying our best. I'm like, man, they're the only things
in
I've
the
managed to
winter.
keep alive. I do not have green thumbs. Okay. I'm good at a lot of things, but here we are. This is what I did this
Snake
weekend.
plants are the best for that, though. You're like, oh my God, I forgot about you. And they're like, we're fine. We're still sort of here.
I don't
Yeah, like
envy you.
they're that like minimal maintenance friendship that like lasts decades because you're
Yeah.
like, yo, I'm just checking in. We're good. We're still
Yep.
good. Cool.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm trying to not kill them. That's about all I did. Nobody tell anybody that I'm that much of a nerd. I'm trying to get my street cred back.
I
Right
like
on.
it, Christine. That's a good weekend. I don't know. Time with the plants, time at the beach. Absolutely
Yeah.
love that.
Need a little
You
rest.
guys all know where I was yesterday, Sunday, where I spent my afternoon and my night. Unfortunately, it wasn't on Broad Street, but it was celebrating
There you
the
go.
birds.
Let's go.
We are
Congrats.
headed to the Super Bowl. It's superstitious 2 weeks now. Okay. We just got do a lot of things, knock on a lot of wood, wear the same socks that you've been wearing, all the things. All the
I love
things.
it.
Finally, the A3 group chat was blowing up for me last night because of this. So thank you guys. I mean,
We had to support you. You're not a
Listen,
little, you're not superstitious, but you're a little stitious.
little stitches,
Little
just a
stitches.
little.
I feel like just as a person, I'm not particularly allowed to root for Philly, but I'm so sick of the Chiefs.
We
I'm
don't
so
even
sorry
need
to
to.
anybody in the chat that I'm like, listen, we need some diversity here. Let's keep it interesting. So I guess here we are. Like, I don't have any Philly swag, but I can bust out like my Philadelphia cream cheese if that helps the cause.
I mean,
Close
we'll
enough.
take it. We'll take it. We'll take what we can get. Fans have done cream cheese heads when we play the Packers instead of a cheese
at
head,
that.
cream cheese head.
See?
It works. It works. We
I
will
love
talk
it.
more about the Super Bowl as we get closer, obviously, because this is a football podcast occasionally when Lisa hosts and the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. But footy, let's talk women's footy and get into it. Sandra, you alluded to it, but the NWSL had its first ever media day this past week where they brought players and teams and media all available in one location ahead of the season. But to do what? Set the scene for us. What was it like at this NWSL Media Day, Sandra?
Pretty massive. The league went ahead and with their plans and they had it out in LA in the Beverly Hills area. And I think that was probably the biggest thing for a lot of folks. There was so many moving parts, a lot of questions with, surrounding the wildfires that had taken place ahead of time. And a lot of folks, rightfully and correctly concerned with that. But it was really interesting getting to talk about it a little bit with players and their feelings on it as well. Just sort of having, again, I think I mentioned this as a tangible thing to point out and look at and say, here's a thing that that's helping us sort of move forward and look, kind of move on. And it's important to have things to hang on to and give you hope. And I think this was a little bit of that maybe for some players. It was a thing in which they can kind of congregate together and talk about a thing that they enjoy doing, which is their job as professional soccer players. So there was a lot of cool, interesting things, a lot of folks out there to go and content grab, ourselves included, Nike as well. Got a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the kits that are gonna drop.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's gonna be some
Ooh,
cool
are
kind
there,
of.
without giving any details, Sandra, is there anybody already that you're like, oh, that's absolute fire?
I'm not gonna lie. I really like what Houston's got going on. They're cooking. They are cooking in multiple ways this offseason,
Okay.
and one of the
Ooh.
kits as well. So I
Houston
know
has
folks.
always had pretty good kits, though. Like, I liked theirs
They
last year.
have, and there's like a little bit of like a refresher, I think, for people. There's some content out that are already on social channels, but a lot of it, folks are like, oh, like those just look like the same old jerseys. But I think folks are forgetting about the possibility of secondary jerseys, and that's kind of what we got a glimpse at. So folks will get official glimpses of some of these kits closer to March, closer to when the season is going to kick off. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be a lot of great photography around and the rollouts of that as well. So I know folks are always excited about that. But yeah, Houston definitely caught my eye for sure as far as the secondary kit. And it was great to chat with all sorts of players. There were a ton of Houston players in attendance. Congrats to them. I think they led the way with most players available. But a lot of other players who joined this media day just off of national team January camps as well. And that includes players who were part of that senior camp and that futures camp as well.
Interesting that Houston was such a big presence there. I think that says a lot about the direction that the club is wanting to go and steps in the right direction on all sides of things for Houston to be there. But for the league to have this media day in the offseason, it's first ever time to do it. Frankly, it's a great opportunity to drum up some media attention around the league in what is otherwise essentially a dead zone between the championship and the start of the season, or like when teams meet for preseason. And in years previously, they've had the draft, which is arguably the second biggest event that the league holds behind the championship. So they needed something to fill that hole a little bit. They got this media day. There's a lot of players there, as Sandra mentioned and talked about. But Sandra, you also got to see some players rocking new kits because there have been trades and transfers and signings, and a lot has changed. One of those including the young U.S. Women's National Team superstar forward Jaedyn Shaw, who went from San Diego to North Carolina Courage. She was rocking a blue kit. She was in her Courage gear at NWSL Media Day. You got to talk to her? Is that right? What did you talk about? What can we hear?
Yeah, she's going to chat a little bit about her arrival to North Carolina because, of course, people were very, very interested in that as a trade that just happened not too long ago. But she also talked a little bit about establishing connections alongside teammates during the January camps and kind of putting a little bit of a bookend on that and kind of what she's taking out of what was essentially more like a reset kind of camp and then going into this preseason with North Carolina. So it was definitely a scrum setting. So apologies for maybe any walking around or outside noise that you might hear, but that's part of what media days are. People are familiar with media days. They're usually kind of a whirlwind, and it's usually lots of people huddling
Sandra
around
does it
players. So
all. Camera,
had to get a little bit.
audio tech, reporter, journalist. Take a listen. Why Jaedyn Shaw chose North Carolina Courage.
What motivated you looking to make a move?
I think there was a lot of different things, but I think ultimately for me, I wanted to take my game to the next level. Therefore, I wanted to change a new change of scenery, new eyes on me. So,
What about North Carolina? Feels like the right fit.
I was actually committed to UNC for 4 years before I went pro, so I already had a connection with Sean and just like the area, and yeah, I was just like really wanting to like play on their team.
Interesting to hear Shaw talk about how she was committed to UNC. Remember, she was one of the first players a part of the U18 mechanism where she was training with Washington Spirit. Ultimately, San Diego snagged her away from the Spirit, but she's back on the East Coast. And it kind of sounds like she had an understanding of what she wanted or rather what she was going to get with North Carolina, the Courage with Sean Nahas, because of the relationship made at UNC when she was committed there. And it sounds like it was her decision, Sandra, which is a big question mark. Christine, you're nodding. You agree with that one?
Yeah, I think it was her decision, but I think it was in the wake of just a very lackluster season, a lot of disruption. I feel like maybe she also knew that she wasn't going to thrive staying on the West Coast. I think that North Carolina is a really established team program. They have a vision, they have a system that really works. Nahas is a great coach. I feel like there's more ticks in that positive column for that shift over than, staying in California. I think that she's made the right decision. I think that I'm excited to see how she fits into this system, just some of that link up. I think, especially knowing like Ashley Sanchez is there, we're in for some fireworks, I think.
Yes, for sure. Speaking of Ashley Sanchez, both Shaw and Sanchez were with Emma Hayes and the U.S. women's national team in the January camp. And she talked a little bit about some of the partnerships that she saw. Take a listen.
Were there any types of connections that sort of just like re-sparked once again, like once you got together? Which teammates were they with?
I'd say like me and Sanch playing together was fun, especially now that we're on the same team and we can bring that into every day. I think getting to play with Ella Stevens, back playing with Hatchie, it was like cool just like playing alongside different players and kind of like being able to like use their strengths instead of just like having to play against them all the time and like having to do all that. So yeah, I mean those couple of players I think was cool.
I was funny you mentioned Sanchez because spoke to her for a second and I asked about like if you guys got together and you're already kind of like plotting and planning for 2025 and she said conversations were had and she just like left it like that.
They were had for sure.
I love it when players are like, yeah, I'm excited to play with this person and not against them. It feels like that was essentially the takeaway from Jaedyn Shaw. I mean, to have a connection at the club level between Shaw and Ashley Sanchez that can translate a little bit to international game and to the play on the bigger stage of things, it seems very promising for both sides, club, country, Sanchez, and Shaw, to be honest.
For sure. It was, this clip didn't make it here, but folks are going to be able to listen to the full stuff on the podcast version. But it was interesting to sort of hear her say that because one of the answers that she also gave in this scrum was talking about her roles on the pitch. And she alluded to the fact that she has to be that kind of utility player, a bit versatile in ways just because of the different sort of other players that are on the team as well when it comes to North Carolina. So she's ready to show those connections off with Sanchez, but I think they're both equally ready to kind of make sure that they are both kind of covering for each other and playing with each other as well.
There's a lot of growth that can happen at North Carolina, especially with now the absence of Caroline, who is no longer there. There's a lot of space for Sanchez, for Shaw to continue to develop themselves. But goals for players like these, yes, at the club level, they want to succeed. They want to fit in well at their club. They want playing time. But there's a bigger aspect of it too on the international level and getting back into consistent swing of things under Emma Hayes with the U.S. women's senior national team. And there were some other takeaways for Jaedyn Shaw at Media Day.
What were maybe some of the things that did resonate with you that you do want to carry in through the 2025 season?
I mean, I think like I got to train a lot of things and ask a lot more questions, go over film, and kind of like clean up the little details that I wasn't able to in the last couple camps. I mean, I think I've gotten closer with a lot of people here, so I was able to spend some time with some of my new teammates and kind of dive into that a little bit.
Christine, what do you think?
I mean, I have, and maybe it's just me, but I have this overwhelmingly positive outlook for Jaedyn Shaw to North Carolina. I think that she has the right attitude. She's very positive. She's extremely talented. I think, I don't know, this was probably one of the best moves North Carolina have made. And I think it's the best for her too. I think that we're going to see her just exponentially grow. We know she hasn't reached her ceiling yet. So I'm super excited for Jaedyn Shaw.
Cool for her to get time in this January camp where there were no friendlies. So it was very self-reflective, it sounds like, from the U.S. women's national team and U.S. soccer. Even Shaw saying that she's had time to watch film, look back at things, and talk about how it has already gone with her at the international level, and maybe get some one-on-one communication with the coaching staff and technical staff to just kind of take a breath. It's so high stress in those national team camps, but when there's no friendlies, you have to imagine it's a little bit more of like, okay, like I'm here. Like, yes, I have to prove myself in training, but like there's no outside speculation that's coming in from media or anything like that, us talking about their performance in the game and this and that. But, you know, on Attacking Third, we always say things, and then as soon as the show is done, things change a lot. Last Thursday, we talked about Bay FC, what they needed to do in 2025 to be better. And we talked a little bit about Venezuelan international Deyna Castellanos, her role with Bay FC. And of course, we stop recording and news drops out of Sandra. It was a Sandra bomb. What happened, Sandra? Fill us in.
You know what? I think that's what's most curious about this entire thing is that the timing of everything. Bay FC announces that there's a mutual agreement for the contract to kind of take care of itself. I believe Bay FC had to buy out some of that contract, and Deyna Castellanos is going to be a free agent essentially, and she's able to kind of navigate where she wants to go next. So it was all very much in quick succession. So you see something like this drop being made official by Bay FC. We're literally at a media day where Deyna Castellanos is. She was at media day ready to talk about the upcoming NWSL season. And at this point, in this moment, when that drops, ahead of players coming into a press junket, you have a player that's technically unaffiliated with the team that you thought you were going to speak to her about. So naturally, in that setting, you do your job as a reporter. And Deyna Castellanos to Portland Thorns FC for 2025 and beyond.
Oof. How funny though to be a player and like, or even media at that sense, and you think you're going to go sit down in front of or get her in a Bay FC capacity, and it's like, switch Portland Thorns. So Deyna Castellanos to Portland Thorns for 2025. Take a listen to this clip.
Hi, Deyna. Congratulations on signing Portland. Talk to me a little bit about this process. You getting to NWSL, and now you were with Bay, but now you're going to play with Portland. How does it feel to go from an expansion club, kind of different experience, to a club that's been in the league since its beginning?
Yeah, like exactly. Like it's a completely different experience. Like going and now playing for Portland, which is a club that has so much history, has so much success, and is something that is for me is very exciting because that's something that I'm more used to. They coming from Europe, but the experience of playing was unbelievable, and obviously like now coming here like is even more exciting, and I can't wait to start.
I feel like we kind of, not that we have like a crystal ball, but every time we talk about a player, like immediately something happens. It happened with the Washington Spirit too, with them getting that international spot and then right away, goalkeeper. Like we finished taping and then something happened. So I don't know who we're going to pick out today, but I guarantee we'll end up finishing today's show and then boom, there'll be more news about somebody we talked about. But I digress. Deyna Castellanos, great get. I feel like Rob Gale has now the time under his belt and the direction to sort of put pieces that the Thorns have needed into place. And I think that Deyna will be absolutely great for them. They lost some players, they had some retirements. I think that toward the latter part of the season, we really saw the Thorns kind of start to correct and have an identity again. And so I think that she'll be a massive, massive add to their attack.
I'm not so convinced how much we're going to see of Deyna Castellanos initially at Portland. It has been a tough transition for her to come into the NWSL, and she struggled with playing time. She struggled with a lot of consistency. I do believe that going to a quote more established club, just purely based on tenure in the league, there is elements there that will definitely help her, because it's almost like we have a system and you just kind of fit into the mix and into the shuffle, and you have to kind of go along the conveyor belt, not in a negative way, honestly, in a good way. There's a lot of things already set in stone, whereas at Bay FC, it was like so much pomp and circumstance around every little thing because it was an expansion team, which is well deserved. But as a player that is adjusting to a lot of different things, that can be overwhelming. Jury is still out for me on Deyna Castellanos and what happens.
I don't know. I feel like the 2.0, her knowing what she's getting into better at this point, because she's got a feel from the inside, is going to be favorable for her. But I also think that like Rob has done a good job of being like, here's where I need you to step up for players and getting them to kind of start to climb
I'm
that
also
mountain.
curious as to where he's going to play her ultimately. I think that's
Yeah.
part of it as well. I mean, this is a player that has typically played attacking midfielder. She got listed and signed to Portland as a forward specifically. I think that's already kind of maybe signaling some things. And I think it's also interesting to note that some of the adjustments that Bay FC tried to make, there was maybe moments where they asked her to play lower. Was that something that worked out for either the coaching staff or the player? I think you could take a look at maybe some of the stat lines and just be motivated by those numbers and say, no, it didn't work out.
Exactly. But how well do you think she's going to translate from attacking midfielder to forward? I think there's also going to be a jump.
There's going to be a jump. I think it's going to take some. It's going to take something, and that's on the coaching staff to unlock that and figure that out, because we saw how frustrated Sophia Smith was last year, and we saw how much
super isolated
success relied on her. And so, how's Morgan Weaver going to look coming back from an injury, this year? How is that all going to flesh out? So, are those players, those younger players that they got last year, going to take that next step in their sophomore year, whether it's Linehan or Turner? How are they going to look in year 2 of their professional career? So I would argue, with the exception of Sophia Smith, who's now Sophia Wilson, sorry, we're going to all have to get used to that maybe there's some open looks there in the attack for Portland.
I think that if anything, though, she'll add, though, Deyna will add to another player who's really good on the dribble, and they definitely need that. So fingers crossed. I'm optimistic.
We'll see. Countdown is on to March 14th, opening weekend for Portland Thorns, Deyna Castellanos, all to come this season. Plus, internationally, we got a new coach for Canada, Casey Stoney. I chatted with her, and we're playing some clips. Stick with us. Hey, welcome back to Attacking Third. Last week or 2 weeks ago, it was announced that former San Diego Wave head coach Casey Stoney has signed with Canada Soccer. She is the new manager for the women's national team. A big, tall task ahead of Stoney as she enters this new era for Canada Soccer. A lot on her to-do list, the federation's to-do list to get Canada Soccer out of the sticky situation they were in this last year with DroneGate and everything that happened. I had a chance to chat with Casey Stoney. We're going to listen to some clips, play them, and then we'll hear what you guys think, Sandra and Christine, about this. So one of the first things I talked about is what she's going to do once they finally get together. Take a listen. When you finally get the team and the group together, what's your first message to them going to be?
Well, firstly, I'm used to challenges. I've been part of building two brand new teams, so a challenge excites me. I think when I get with the players, and I've obviously already had a call with them, for me, it's about setting a standard to move forward. Obviously, very aware of what's happened in the past, but it's about what we can build now moving forward. It's about how do we build a team that excites the fans? How can we be really proud of who we are as a team and build an identity? I'm a player's coach. I always have been. I always will be. You know, I was a player. I understand. I played international football for 18 years as well at the highest level. So I understand the needs, the demands and the pressures and the ups and downs. And, you know, I advocate for them on every level, and I'll continue to do that. I want to make sure that I support them on their journey, that I challenge them to be better every single day, and that we can create something, you know, in our environment where they feel like they can really accomplish something when we get into 2027.
Good stuff. I remember when we did like the reaction segment to this news, it was like, okay, Casey Stoney is going to be named as head coach of Canada. And I believe it was Lisa, myself, and Darian. And I don't think there was really a moment in where we were reacting to the news where we were just like, did Canada soccer get this right? There was never any shades of that. And I think when you kind of hear this response to this first question that you teed up, Lisa, I think, look, they maybe a player-minded players coaches is exactly what this program needs right now, kind of moving forward.
She also mentions how she's been part of new clubs before, like bringing Manchester United to fully professional, of course, expansion side San Diego Wave a couple years ago. And although Canada soccer has been around, right, they won a gold medal at the Olympics 5 years ago. It's still a new beginning, and it's almost like starting over from the ground up. And you're exactly right, Sandra. It's the right move. But because Stoney was a player, it brings a different perspective. So I asked her about that. Take a listen. What is something that stuck with you as a player that you now try to emulate as a coach yourself?
I'll be honest, like, and this is what I always say, and it's positive and negative in some ways. Like, every experience I had has influenced who I am as a coach. And I took so much from what I wouldn't have done and what I would have done differently. And then I took quite a bit from like really positive experiences where actually my coach really just cared about me as a person and put value into me as a person and was open and honest and transparent. And then I took some experiences of like complete opposite, when I didn't feel cared for and they didn't care about my development. They didn't spend time and they weren't transparent and they weren't honest. And then, like, what did I want as a player? I wanted transparency. I wanted honesty. I want someone that cared about me. I wanted someone that invested in my development and cared about me as a person and as much as a player. So I've learned a lot being in the game for so long. Do I always get it right? No, I'm human, but I also hold my hands up when I don't get it right, because I think it's important that you lead with humility. And if I want my players to feel the freedom of like being able to make mistakes and learn, like, I need to show that I'm that too, and that I can make mistakes and I need to learn from it. So I think I just try and create an environment of like psychological safety, but challenge and support, and a place where people can come and like just be their best version of themselves.
Casey Stoney is absolutely hands down remarkable at the human aspect of coaching, aside from being really, really articulate in explaining her systems, tactics, and things like that in every single coach's call that I've ever been on with her. And it's really nice to see that the yield that we've seen on our end is actually very intentional. And you can see in just her objectives, the way that she approaches things, how supportive she is. Even her time at the Wave, when they had sort of the injury crisis that prompted her using a lot of rookies in a lot of places where she's gotten them to stand up and be leaders on the field, are sort of proof positive that what she does, the integrity that she has, is definitely filling her cup as a coach. And I think that I'm excited to see what she actually can enact for Canada, because to your point, Lisa, it very much is like starting with a new team with an expansion side. There's a lot of work to do on field. There's a lot of work to do financially. There's a lot of work to do just for the spirit of what Canada soccer has meant and will mean, reinstilling a sense of identity that got eroded with the recent scandal. I think that Casey Stoney is absolutely the person of the job. It's refreshing to hear that she has her eyes and feelers out for all of these things and what makes a player a great player. And it just stems from what she experienced, the highs and lows.
One of my biggest takeaways from just talking with her and hearing her have these conversations is the level of transparency that she wants. And she's always been that way, even the last several years in the NWSL, saying anything that she really thinks, right? Whether it's to media, on her social media, she is pretty much an open book. And she even said that to me at one point. She was like, players of Canada Soccer, if they have questions about me, I'm answering them. And I'm also telling them to go ask other players that I've coached. Talk to Jaedyn, who she has coached at San Diego, Canadian goalkeeper, and find out what type of coach Stoney is. That's what she's encouraging of her players. Hey, go do your homework on me, because I'm also doing my homework on you. But this is a new role for Stoney, right? She's only ever been at the club level, a little stint with the English national team. But now as an international coach, she's got different goals. I asked her about it too. When you take these first steps into Canada Soccer, what is a personal goal that you have for yourself on this new journey?
I think I just want to be the leader that they need me to be. I think I want to be somebody they can rely on, somebody that they know that they can come to for development. And, I think I want to be someone that can lead the program, continue to develop every aspect of it. And hopefully we can achieve something in 2027 that this country hasn't done before. But, everyone's going to want to do it. But we're going to try hard.
All eyes on Brazil, Sandra.
It's so funny to hear you mention that and hear her mention her previous answer, or you saying that she mentioned in one of her previous answers that, go ask about me. I love that energy. You don't know about me? Go ask about me. And it's funny just coming off of media day, because I technically I did. I also chatted with Kaylin Sheridan. She's not gonna get to work with her at a club level, but that's not gonna she's gonna still get to work with her at a national team level. And players do kind of echo those sentiments. Sheridan is included, I think, in that collective of very impressive players who have found themselves coached under Casey Stoney. But just hearing that, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to kind of hear her response in that. It's not so it's yes, it was about getting the right person for this role, Canada Soccer, but I think it was also equally important to get the right person at this very specific time in their history, where they have to kind of come out of the Olympic tournament that they just had, having to come out away from the drone scandal. Who's going to be that coach to come in and make sure that the players actually can hit that reset button and move on? I think some of the reaction when we first saw the news was that it wasn't so much that she was going to have to get players on board as far as being able to stabilize a locker room. That's not what we saw. That's not how we saw these players react when they kind of ultimately went through crisis. We saw them go on an incredible run during the Olympics, that they were actually quite motivated for and by each other. Now they're going to have a head coach in that locker room that can kind of channel all of that very good energy already, and hopefully do something like Stoney said, maybe something really special in 2027. And it being in Brazil, I think that's going to just work in favor of the region in general, or your CONCACAF or CONMEBOL. You get to prepare for that cycle in a relatively reasonable travel schedule. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Stoney does with Canada when they all get together.
Whether you're coaching domestically, internationally, whether you're a player or a coach, whether you're a pundit or just a fan, you got thoughts on Naomi Girma, $1.1 million transfer to Chelsea. So of course I had to ask her former San Diego Wave coach what she thought about Girma going to Chelsea. Is this the right move for her to go to Chelsea now?
Firstly, I'm glad I'm not a Wave, because losing her would have just not been good for me. I cannot speak highly enough of her as a player. And as a human being, she's incredible. Like, she has no idea how good she is. She really doesn't. She's got some of the best footwork I've ever seen. And we did a lot of work on that during my time. Her ability to cover ground, the way she can defend. She's great on the ball. She can play with both feet where she needs to. She's unbelievable. She's for me, like one of the best centre backs in the world. And I would have done absolutely everything in my power not to lose her. I'm not surprised by her going to Chelsea. You look at their squad, it's absolutely stacked, and they just continue to buy new players and obviously strengthen. Obviously, Kadisha Buchanan being out kind of makes sense for them to bring Naomi in and pay that money. And obviously she's still so young. So being able to invest in someone that's going to give you the next 5, 6, 7 years at your club is big. She's not going to get as tested as much defensively, I don't think, in the WSL, but obviously working under Sonia, different tactics, different ways of playing, she'll continue to grow. It's an experience of her being in a different country as well. So yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm going to continue to follow her career with interest.
Oh, well, from one highly versatile, 100+ capped national team defender opining on the world best per Emma Hayes and per Casey Stoney, like one of the best center backs in the world. I mean, well earned and high praise for sure. Girma going to Chelsea as if they have any weaknesses is just bananas at this point. They're sitting at the top of the table. Girma paired up with, like, right now the back line of like what Lucy Bronze, Bjorn, Bright, and Neem Charles that they've been playing is Chelsea. You don't need that. You don't need that. No, Girma is absolutely electric. She's a really fun, dynamic player to watch. I think that I don't know. She's obviously a world great and she'll go into the Footballer Hall of Fame, but to see her transition into BWSL is going to be really, really interesting because, to Casey's point, different league, she could get a little sleepy back there in that back line. We could see her get a little bit more active. Can you imagine like more Girma goals?
I
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
I love more Girma goals.
Didn't even think about that. Honestly didn't think about that, which I appreciate Casey's reaction, Stoney. It's a fair answer. It's like, yes, you're full of praise for a former player that you coached, but she kept it real and said she might not be challenged the same way in Women's Super League the way she was in NWSL. So maybe that does mean some tactical things for her and Bon Pastor. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Casey Stoney always keeping it real. There is a full interview I did with Casey Stoney. It'll be out as podcast only. So subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I don't know, anywhere that you're listening, because then when it drops later today, tomorrow, Mark will drop it at some point. You can listen to the whole thing. But speaking of Chelsea, back in action this weekend in the Barclays Women's Super League. We are recapping it next. Stick with us. Welcome back to Attacking Third. Christine's gone, but we got a cat in the mix. I love it. She's gone. We'll catch up with Christine later. Barclays Women's Super League in action this weekend. We got a whole host of games with a lot of changes ultimately coming in the standings. Christine, how's it going? Welcome back. Glad to have you with us. Let's talk some of the matches. Aston Villa against Manchester City. It was crazy. Villa go up early in the 6th minute, and then Viv Miedema, she comes back with a brace. Then City Aston Villa get an own goal. Mary Powler, Jess Park, they score in the second half, just 10 minutes apart, and City get the dub 4-2 over Aston Villa. You'll love to see Viv Miedema with just incredible goals. Class on the day for her. Then we got Tottenham, 3-2 win over Crystal Palace. Tottenham, they go up 2 goals in just 23 minutes. Crystal Palace, they climb back into it. Goals from Katie Stengel and Ashley Worden. And then a late game winner in the 95th minute of stoppage time from Olivia Holt to give Tottenham all 3 points on the road. We got Leicester against Liverpool, a 2-1 win for Leicester over Liverpool. West Ham, Everton, 2-0 for West Ham. And then Manchester United, 3-0 over Brighton. But let's talk a little bit about Chelsea Arsenal, Sandra, because this ultimately was the game of the weekend, top of the table clash. And Chelsea get a 1-0 win over Arsenal to claim that top spot, create even more separation from themselves and everyone in behind them. But it didn't come without a little bit of controversy. A penalty kick call in the second half. Then Katie McCabe gets sent off with a red card. What did you make, Sandra, of all the drama we saw from the Blues?
Of course, that's how. Of course, that's how it played out. That's what it all came down to for Chelsea and Arsenal. I mean, not a game you wanted to drop points in. Kim Little at one point saying ahead of the match, like they just have to go out there and beat Chelsea. Like that is what they have to do. And unfortunately, didn't happen. I think you can argue that maybe there were stretches of the games in which it obviously could have gone either way. But you also have to maybe take a look at Chelsea and what they were presenting. I mean, more shots, more attempts on target. It just sort of felt like they weren't finding the back of the net with reason, right? Because of Arsenal's efforts. But you hate to see something boil down to that. I think if you're on one side of the pitch, and then if you're on the other, you love to see Girl Ryan convert a penalty kick and pick up all 3 points and ultimately give you such a lead at the top of the table. And you're doing it on a day where your club is announcing the acquisition of Naomi Girma. Stop it. Are you kidding me? It's going to be tough. It was already tough to begin with to chase Chelsea during this season. I don't know how you look at a game like that where they unveil Girma and say, oh yeah, we're really going to catch him now.
I mean, Arsenal fans had hope throughout this match, Christine. You had
and
to
it's
have,
the
because
hope that kills you.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course there was hope. So the opposite of this is that I was actually there for the earlier fixture this season against Chelsea where Arsenal got to play them at the Emirates. This was also 3 days before Jonas Eidevall resigned. So this was absolutely a night and day match in contrast to the prior. They were fairly evenly matched with Chelsea. The problem was that Arsenal, even though they were getting their share of the ball, Chelsea were letting them pass the ball around and having it at their will. The problem is that Chelsea were far more decisive and clinical once they got on the ball. They had all of the firepower. They're subbing on Gura Wright and they're subbing on Lauren James. The depth there is just insane. We know that Chelsea are just a Goliath. Arsenal did what they could, but nearly getting only 10 shots off and a couple of those only being on target it's not enough. So again, Arsenal are, no pun intended, have shot themselves in the foot, not being able to get those opportunities to a desirable end.
Hands down. I mean, when you looked at the stats for this, Chelsea had 9 corners too. You mentioned 21 shots, 9 shots on target, 6 big chances created. Arsenal didn't have a single, quote, big chance created. It was absolutely unfortunate. Defensive stalwart of the day has to go to Arsenal goalkeeper Daphne Van Domselaar, who had an incredible game. She had 8 saves on the afternoon against Chelsea. So Chelsea is just so good attacking wise, just so good attacking wise. But the fact that it came down to a penalty has to be a little bit heartbreaking. Controversial one, questionably. What did you think?
Yeah.
A pen?
I mean, like I don't tend to want to re-referee games, but had there been VAR, this would have gone a different way.
Sandra, what do you think?
You have to imagine if you have the tech available, it could have.
I think she touches
I mean,
her.
like VAR, give it and take it away.
I don't think so. I think if there was VAR, it still would have been called a pen. She dives in there. Yes,
yeah, but
Lauren James emphasizes the fall, hands down. She probably could have caught herself, but there was no contact.
Right, but there also was ball contact first that you see her skid. So the problem is that if they would have reviewed that, it wouldn't have stood. However, again, in the interest of working only in reality, they got the pen. They lost it that way. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I would say that performances, comparing the last match against Chelsea versus this one, infinitely better, much better squad, much better connections. Again, not enough. Chelsea had the better game on this given day.
I mean, when you have Lauren James, Gura Wright coming off the bench to change your game, it's game over. It's game over. So after this result, Chelsea, they stay at the top of the Women's Super League table on 34 points. Arsenal, though, they fall all the way to 4th. They don't pick up any points. But Manchester United, they had a weekend for themselves, a 3-0 win over Brighton, but they pick up these 3 points that jump them all the way into 2nd place, Christine. This is a United side that could they catch Chelsea? Is it their year?
I mean, they're now 7 points off Chelsea, but they're the best in form in this top of the table to be able to chase them. Like Mark Skinner definitely has a pep in his step these days. Ella Toon has been on an absolute tear. Miyazawa, that goal, but Celine Bizet with that absolute banger from range. They're scoring goals all kinds of ways. They've really come together. They had, double digits, 21 shots all in, and then, a chunk of those were on target. Sophie Bagley was absolutely busy. She came up with some good double saves, but there was no stopping this United side. The unfortunate part is this loss for Brighton slides them down into 5th, which is, I know, strangely enough, this cliff point in the BWSL table. As we know with WSL, what ends up happening is this gap broadens very quickly. And if you are in the position of giving chase, it's very, very challenging to make up those points at any point in the season. Right now, Brighton are at that 17 points, and below that is kind of into the abyss where we find, I'm so sorry, Sandra's team, Palace, with 5 points all the way at the bottom. But yeah, I think United, hey, have a go at them. Somebody needs to challenge them. Otherwise, this league is going to get really boring and uncompetitive really, really quickly. It needs to be about more than let me secure a 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place spot. That's all locked up. It's the other teams trying to give chase at this point in this juncture in the season.
If United want to look at the silver lining, they've got Ella Toon on a hot streak, 5 goals in 3 games, and to play against a Brighton side and be so dominant and so in control of the match means good things on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say Brighton were not by any means a pushover in this game. They were fairly evenly matched. It's just that United knew what to do when they had to do it. I think that it'll be interesting. United stay healthy. The only thing in their way is that they have a far more challenging fixture schedule ahead than some of the other teams in the top 4.
Yep. 12 match days in. We'll catch you caught up later in the week about what happens next match day 13, this upcoming weekend. Don't go anywhere in case you missed it. Coming up next on Attacking Third. Hey, welcome back to Attacking Third. In case you missed it, news, notes, trades, transfers, everything that's happened around the world of women's football that we haven't chatted about enough. I'm going to say enough because our first nugget is that Chelsea have officially signed U.S. women's national team defender Naomi Girma for a world record $1.1 million from the San Diego Wave. She appeared after the Chelsea-Arsenal match this past weekend in front of the home crowd. It was rainy. It was at Stamford Bridge. She got a jersey with her name on the back of it. I mean, this is one of the biggest and best signings. I mean, Sandra and I have talked about it. We touched on it earlier in this show, but in terms of the NWSL, this is a whole other conversation, Sandra, but what does this say about the NWSL that players like Caroline, like Naomi Girma, arguably the best center back in the world right now, are leaving the league? And the $1 million transfer isn't what the NWSL is paying. It's actually what they're receiving. Does that diminish NWSL?
No, I think it's outstanding. I think you have a move that perfectly symbolizes the 2 best leagues in the world right now. And that's part of the That's part of the chatter. That's part of the conversation. That's part of the buzz. But in women's soccer, when you're always talking about, when you're making those silly comparisons of league versus league and who's the best and who's outstanding, and getting Casey Stoney on record saying that Girma going to Chelsea means that she might not face as staunch competition as NWSL. Like those are the things that get people going. So I love it. I think it's a move that not only is it historic, but it's another one of these moves that moves the needle in general. Like, who knows what we're going to be talking about this time next year. I thought Naomi Girma was going to be the first $2 million transfer fee player. Turns out she's a record-setting transfer fee player at 1.1. So what does that mean in the future, that we're just ticking and ticking and ticking along? So I'm here for it. I think it's great for women's football. I think it's great for both leagues, really. When you kind of look at that type of headline, it's almost feels like a shared headline. No, you don't want to lose that type of talent. But 1.1 million is absolutely nothing. It's going to help you sleep a little bit at night. That's a lot of money to get back the other way. So I'm here for it. I think we're going to see it work out in a number of different ways for Naomi Girma. We're going to see how her play develops, what other things she adds on to her plate in the games coming up against, for United States women's national team. And for players like Carlin or any others that might find themselves going the other way, they're getting those paydays because of all of the incredible things that they did in NWSL. So I don't know if they get those type of returns if they're having those kind of performances in different leagues, but they're definitely getting them because they played in the United States.
Some other big news: San Diego Wave, they signed French national team midfielder Kenza Dali from Aston Villa. She's with San Diego through the 2026 season. The Chicago Stars, they sign a young gun, U17 World Cup standout forward Michaela Johnson. Johnson will be in Chicago for 3 years through 2027. So Chicago bulking up, but younger, perhaps not the steps that we need Chicago to be making in terms of immediate impact in the 2025 season, but we'll keep an eye out for Michaela Johnson. Houston Dash, though, top of the headlines this past week for a number of different reasons. This morning, it dropped that Houston Dash acquired forward Messiah Bright in a trade with Angel City. The Angel City gets $100,000 of interleague transfer funds. Plus, this transaction includes up to $50,000 in additional performance-based incentives. But Messiah Bright to Houston Dash. Add it to the list, Sandra, of players that the Dash are acquiring.
I have to wonder if you don't look at the moves that Houston is making this offseason and you're not a little bit motivated or a little bit showing the slightest interest in what they're doing and how it's going to look in 2025, from Delaney Sheehan to Yasmin Ryan and now Messiah Bright. These are players that will kind of raise your eyebrow. They'll turn your neck a little bit and say, okay, what is Houston cooking over here? Let me see what's going on. But I think this is also a move that, there's another club involved in this. It's Angel City. And I think you look at that and you have to wonder if, did Messiah Bright kind of, get what she was looking for in Angel City when she made the move from Orlando to LA? Probably not. And will she get it now with Houston? I guess, we'll see. It's all about how Fabrice Gautra kind of puts all these pieces together and how they perform. That's a lot of exciting attackers to have in the mix, and Ryan, Alozia, and now Messiah Bright, Diana Ordonez. Like, how are these players going to look and play together for Houston going forward?
Sandra, I'm thinking that Messiah Bright was like, we have a interim coach about
got to make the moves.
back on our combo from last week.
Lisa, after last season at Angel City, you have to think about it, right? Like, she had 15 starts her rookie season for Orlando, and then all of a sudden that she requested the trade. She went to Angel City, and I think that she never got what she expected to. Mm-hmm. She got 7 starts all season. She didn't particularly stand out the way she did the prior season. I think she's trying to get back to that. So with anything, I think with Houston, the way that they're stacking players and there seems to be a vision there, I think this bodes well for her. So optimistic as hell.
Yeah, Houston is as well. A lot more happened with Houston. We're going to dive into it later in the week on Thursday. So tune back into Attacking Third, 11 a.m. Eastern time this Thursday, January 30th. Woo! Inching towards February. But it's been a blast, my friends. Sandra, Christine, the people with us live on YouTube. If you watched on Galazzo Network or listened as a podcast, thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging with us. Let us know if you enjoyed the show and what else you want to hear from us. That's it. We're out. We're done for the day. Thank you. For Sandra, Christine, Mark, I'm Lisa. This was Attacking Third.